Hi, everybody. Are you looking for some free science fiction and fantasy books to get you through this weekend? We've got them. Today's list includes a shifter romance by a New York Times best-selling author, a book about a space pirate, and a thriller about climate change, because, yeah, that's what we need right now in our escapist fiction. But before we get to all that, hi, everybody. Welcome back to the MetaStellar YouTube channel. My name is Maria KOROLOV. I'm the editor here at MetaStellar. And I want to thank editors Terrence Smith, Lilibet Dominguez-Torres, and Arturo Sierra, and E.S. Foster for helping out with today's reviews. You guys are awesome. It's Arturo's first time with us, so welcome to the team, Arturo. And Emma is here with us today. Hi, Emma.
Hi.
All right, yay. Okay, don't forget to like and subscribe, guys, so you don't miss any of these videos. And we have a newsletter that goes out every Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time if you want to get these in your inbox. So that way you don't miss any of the great free books that are available on Amazon in the science fiction and fantasy category. Every single Friday, we look at the top 5 best-selling books that are free, and we'll read the first 2 chapters of them and tell you what we think. Okay, let's get into the books. We're going to start with book number 5 and work our way down to book number 1 on today's list. Let me make that a little bit bigger so you guys can see this. So there's the book, The Curse Keepers by D.G. Swank. This is the first of 3 books in The Curse Keepers, a paranormal romance series by a New York Times bestselling author. The other books are 99 cents each, and both are in Kindle Unlimited. Kindle Unlimited is where you pay 12 bucks a month and you read all the books you want, kind of like a Netflix for books, if you don't mind being part of the Amazon hegemony. Lilibet Dominguez-Torres read this for us, and this is her review. So 23-year-old Ellie has always trusted her instincts and tried to forget the stories her father told her about the curse. And her mother has died, and maybe it's related to the curse. And Ellie doesn't want to think that. She liked to think that the curse and her supposed link to it were nothing but a myth that was passed down through her family through the years. And then everything changes because a mysterious yet attractive young man shows up where she works. And she knows something's wrong with him because of the way she feels, like being near him literally takes her breath away. She can barely breathe while giving him his check, and a voice in the back of her head tells her to stay away from him. But it's not until he approaches her and takes her hand that she realizes why. The moment their skin touches, Ellie feels as if an electric current has gone through her body, and she starts hearing screams, which instantly makes her realize that maybe the curse wasn't just a myth. So Lilibet says that the beginning of this book feels a little rushed, and you barely get a glimpse into who the main character is, or what's going on in the world before all the complications start going. And then she's suddenly out of breath and creeped out and everything. She says she is a fan of fast-paced books, but this was a little too fast for her taste, and she wasn't really hooked into the story, or didn't get caught up in the curse and how it affects Ellie and the people around her. She didn't like this beginning, and so she doesn't think she'll continue reading it because she didn't get caught up in the story. But since a lot of other people do like this type of book, the author is a New York Times bestselling author. Check this out. And if you're a fan of urban fantasy books, it's a free book. So there you go. Okay, we're going to go to book number 4 on today's list. But I also have to say that I wouldn't read that book either. I don't like it when like a handsome man touches a woman's skin and immediately like magical things start to happen. I'm like, nah, not for me. I'd rather she killed him right off the bat and like moved on with her life.
Your
But
cold, cold heart, Maria.
I do have a
Yeah.
cold, cold heart. I just read a series of 10 space opera books, which I reviewed in a different article. Uh, And in the book, the woman protagonist like kills like everybody she meets. She kills so many people, she blows up entire civilizations. I'm like, awesome. And she doesn't have a love affair with any of them. So her feelings never get in the way. She can kill with absolute impunity. I
You'll
like
have to let
that
me
in a
know what
make.
that series is
I
so I
love
can
that
read it.
too. Yeah. So yeah, it's in the book review section on our website. I might add it as a link in the comments below too. But anyway, let's move on to book number 4 on today's list. Okay, here we go. Panic Peak by William Liggett. This is the first of 2 books in Warming World Adventures, a climate change thriller series. The other book is $6, but it is in Kindle Unlimited. And Terrence read this for us. So, what did Terrence have to say about this book?
So he says that like this climate change thriller hits a little too close to home. It starts
Oh,
off
wait a second. Since you're reading this review, does this hit close to home for you?
a little bit, I think, because like yeah, going through like Helene and then Hurricane Milton, that was pretty stressful, and having to deal with like really huge hurricanes. And this was like the first time that, well, also too, it was like it used to be that we would see like a major one every 5 years maybe, and now it's more like two. Because I also went through Ian like 2 years ago, so yeah, it's really weird, but you could definitely see like the impact of stuff, and I also think like even just the time of year, it's like it didn't used to be 75 during the fall season, you know?
Yeah, for those who don't know, I actually didn't expect Emma to be here today. I
Yeah.
thought she would be hunkering down without power because she's in Florida. So anyway, Terrence's review.
Yeah. So humanity is deep in the climate emergency, and there's the impact on countless lives can be seen on the news every day. Terrence mentions that maybe this shouldn't be under science fiction. Maybe it should just be under the general fiction or the current affairs section. So he says that the premise of the book is that there's this one glacier that's growing even as the rest of the world's glaciers are sinking. So the likely source of this is the experiments that one scientist has been conducting in manipulating the weather. I already start to think of like all the conspiracy theorists talking about Milton right now. So once again, this hits too close to home. But in order to fund this research, the scientist turns to a coalition of oil tycoons to hope to use the technology to offset the criticisms of their contributions to the environmental crisis, sort of get his research going up. So on the surface, it kind of looks like, growing glaciers would be a good thing. But the mystery of the glacier's growth is what Kate, another climate scientist, is investigating. Even though her glacial research center is in danger of being shut down by bureaucrats, she still wants to investigate this whole thing. So Terrence says the opening chapter of this novel is scary since the monster is one that humanity is witnessing in real time and time again. Massive downpours, catastrophic flooding, that type of thing. Kate witnesses at one point a family in their car swallowed by flooding of a forage river. So it's like, yeah, a lot of this
Oh,
is hitting very close to home. The other scientist there in this book is this guy who's secretly making the glacier grow. He comes off as more interesting character so far, according to Terrence. So what he's doing is for the right reasons and trying to find an antidote to the catastrophic climate disasters around the globe. That does seem pretty honorable. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to see like what the story might do with that. But however, he's doing it with the aid of some unsavory characters that Terrence says. And it's something that he overall thinks would be a compelling tale of the ecological crises and like corporate conspiracy, things like that. He says the big plus goes to the hero for also being a scientist. So he says he wouldn't mind continuing with this one.
oh, and I just realized I was gonna read that review, and you were gonna read the previous one.
Yeah, that's no big deal though.
Because I can't count. All right, because the next book is one that you read.
I
We were going
did.
to alternate today. We had this whole plan planned out, and then I got distracted. All right, so here's this book, a little bit bigger for you guys. Captive of Outlaws by Jade Evans, the first of three books in Shifters of Sherwood, a paranormal romance series. And by shifter, I take it to mean werewolves. The other books are $5 each, but they are in Kindle Unlimited. The third book is not out yet, but it will be released in December and is available for pre-order. And like I said, Emma read this for us. Emma, what did you think?
So this one, it wasn't necessarily my cup of tea, but I did enjoy actually reading the beginning of it. So the story starts out with Marin. She's this young girl whose parents have just died in a car crash. So she's at the funeral with her social worker. She isn't taking the events well, it's this horrible tragedy. During the funeral, a man comes up and he makes a speech talking about, Marin's parents and how they were great people. And Marin hasn't actually met this person yet. She finds out his name is John, but already she doesn't like him. There's just something off that she can't put her finger on. So after the funeral, the man comes over and he explains that he's actually the executor for her parents. So he's sort of in control of everything for right now until Marin comes into her inheritance at 21. So Marin is going to have to stay with him for now until she comes into that inheritance. And she ends up being so shocked that she faints. And we eventually learn later that the reason for this is she has, I think, like some form of epilepsy because she occasionally has seizures, but that doesn't hinder her from getting stuff done. So the book then cuts to 7 years later. Marin now works as a mechanic for John, and she enjoys her job. She doesn't like the inherent sexism that comes with it. Like a lot of people assume that she's a guy or that she doesn't know anything about cars, that type of thing. So she's dealing with this car when a young man comes up and asks for help. Marin climbs out from underneath the car she's working on, and she immediately notices how handsome this guy is because it's a paranormal fantasy, of course. But they don't hit it off. Marin schools him on cars before John returns, and the young man suddenly leaves. And she's thinking, oh, great, now I just lost out on being able to work on this guy's car and therefore being able to earn extra money. But that was kind of her fault. So John announces that the sheriff is coming over to talk business, and Marin hates the sheriff just as much as she hates John, but there's nothing she can do about it. Thankfully, she's almost 21, so she's about to come into her inheritance. She's gonna be able to leave. She can finally escape and live her own life. But out of suspicion, she decides to see what John and the sheriff are up to. She overhears them talking about a conservatorship and planning to keep her out of her inheritance by placing her under this so that they can get all the money. And they also mention that her parents' death might not be an accident. So Marin decides to break into John's office to look at those papers later that night. So she sneaks back into the garage. Sure enough, there are papers that would make John the caretaker of all her finances. He would have control over everything. But just when she thinks about like running away with the car that she's been building by herself, it turns out that someone else is already in the garage with her. But before they can get to her, she gets in the car she's been working on and she guns it out of the garage and she heads straight for the forest. So she's all alone. For what I understand for the rest of the book, she comes across this band of like outlaws because this is a take on the Robin Hood story and they live literally in Sherwood Forest. So she's going to be hanging out with them. So like I enjoyed the beginning of the story a lot more than I thought I would. Like from the description, it sounded like it was going to be this other love story with like shifters involved. It's not my cup of tea. That still definitely seems like what it's going to end up being, but I really enjoyed learning about Marin and like her troubles, what she's going through, and I found the premise really interesting and engaging. So I don't think I'll continue with it personally, but if it sounds interesting just from this review, check it out.
Oh, right. Like Marin as in Maid Marian,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
John as in John, and Sheriff as in the sheriff, which I just got it. I edited this review and I just got it just now. All right. Next, we have number two on today's list. And this book is EMP Collapse by Colton Lively, a standalone book of small town post apocalypse EMP survival. But even though this is a standalone book, don't think that there isn't more where this came from. The author has more than 30 books on Amazon of this same exact genre and nearly the same plot. There's plenty of reading here if you like this kind of book. And all the books are in Kindle Unlimited. And the author is a regular on our Free Friday list. A lot of people love him. For some reason, EMP books are super popular. I don't know why. A regular reviewer who takes EMP books and loves them and eats them up like potato chips couldn't do this book today. So I had to review it, and I hate EMP books. So take that with a grain of salt. I think the whole premise of EMP is kind of silly. So the EMP stands for electromagnetic pulse, and they're caused by nuclear bombs, solar flares, or EMP guns. You can literally point an EMP gun at a car, and all the electronics will die. And these exist. It's a well-known problem, and most of our critical infrastructure has been shielded against EMP problems. And I know this because I write about cybersecurity in my day job. So this is a known problem because it's the plot of many books and movies that EMPs take out everybody's electronics and civilization collapses. And people don't want that to happen. So our critical infrastructure is shielded. In these books, too often the collapse happens immediately and everybody instantly turns into a feral murderer, like instantly. And it just strikes me as this kind of survivalist fantasy kind of situation going on, which kind of creeps me out. But I'm also creeped out by the whole post-apocalyptic survival kind of thing, because again, that hits a little bit too close to home. Is it even fiction, you know? So I like my escapist fiction to be a little bit more escapist. So take all that with a grain of salt, okay? So this book opens with Georgia. She's 22 years old. She's a writer, and she's feeding breakfast to her young niece and nephew. The parents are her older sister and the sister's husband, and they're moving from California to South Dakota. Georgia lives in California, and she's been babysitting for a few days to help the parents, get everything organized. And in 2 days, she plans to put the kids on a plane, pack up all her stuff, and then a week later, she's also driving to South Dakota, where she's going to live in a small cabin house on her sister's property, help out around the farm, help watch the kids, get some writing done. So that's kind of like the premise of the setting. And the first couple of chapters are establishing the family dynamics, what the kids are like, the annoying neighbors, things happening at school, things happening on the news. So what's happening on the news is that there's an upcoming meteor shower. And some crazy people think it's the end of the world because, that's what crazy people think. So there's a bunch of this happening. And then there's an earthquake. Instead of staying in the apartment, Georgia takes the kids and leaves the apartment building and discovers that it's not an earthquake at all. Instead, fireballs are coming down from the sky and destroying everything, including her apartment. She gets the kids into her truck and starts driving out of town, barely avoiding these fireballs coming down. And she manages to make it out past all the chaos and destruction. Her phone is dead, obviously, but she does have a paper map, a full tank of gas, and some emergency supplies. So she decides to keep driving. And by the time I stopped reading, which was a few chapters in, she was halfway to her destination in South Dakota, running out of gas, still has no self-service, and for some reason she's not meeting anyone who's helpful at all. There's no emergency services out anywhere. The towns have gone dark. It's just weird and creepy. And the people she meets along the way are all like, potential murderers and killers and stuff. And she kind of bluffs her way past them by pretending she has a gun and her husband and brother are just there, right? So it's just weird vibes because, we've been through some emergency situations here in the United States, and people kind of come together and help, and emergency services comes out, and volunteers come out, and people kind of pull together. So this idea of an emergency happening and society immediately falls apart and everyone starts turning on each other really doesn't sit well with me. Also, it's a very creepy beginning. It's way too weird and creepy for me. I don't like these fireballs. I don't understand why everything is like breaking down. But if it's your kind of thing, it is definitely a very readable book. And if you like this book, like I said, the author has a lot of other books in the genre, and he often makes these books free. So if you keep an eye out for it, even if you don't have Kindle Unlimited, you can probably read a lot of his books without having to shell out a lot of money. So definitely something to keep an eye out if this is your thing, and if you're not getting enough disasters now just by turning on the news. All right, before we go on to book number one on today's list, I want to thank our Patreon supporters. Because MetaStellar is a publication that's always free to our readers, we publish original fiction, science fiction, fantasy, and horror from like hundreds of writers. We have new free short stories on the site every week. We have 3 anthologies now out. The links are in the description box below. And we do all this with volunteers. We're all volunteers. Emma and I are volunteers, and there's like several other dozen people who work on MetaStellar, also all volunteers. So all the money that's donated through Patreon, and by joining our channel here on YouTube, all that money goes directly to paying writers for original short stories. And I also want to mention that Emma is a freelance editor and she offers editorial services. And I am, in addition to being a tech journalist, I'm also a sci-fi writer and I have books up on Amazon. So check those out. I would really appreciate it. And if you don't like them, please leave a review. Any kind of review helps. Okay, let's go on to book number one on today's list. And I love this title, Hometown Space Pirate by C.G. Harris. This is the first of 4 books in the Viraquin Voyage, a sci-fi adventure series. The other books are $3 to $5 each, and they're not in Kindle Unlimited. This is the author's first time on our Free Friday list. And our newest community member, Arturo Sierra, read this for us. And since he can't make it here today, Emma, would you do the honors?
Yeah, definitely. So, Arturo says that when he started out, he had specific expectations for what this space opera might be, especially like Maria, you said that that's one of your favorite genres, so I don't know if you find this one interesting or not, but he says it comes from the perspective of the tin hat wearing crackpot, who's trying to tell us that the truth is out there and like the aliens are out there, and he's actually right. So it kind of goes against Arturo's expectations a little bit, but starts off with Ben. He's this main character, and he's trying to tell the world, he's letting the world know about his telepathic connection with these alien intelligences. So in the first few chapters, he goes on this talk show to promote his tell-all book, and it's an experience that goes about as well as you expect. So the punchline is also that the aliens are watching the show that Ben is currently on, and turns out that Ben is not crazy. There are indeed aliens who want to speak to him. So soon after appearing on TV, he ends up being abducted, and he becomes unwittingly embroiled in this sort of interstellar conflict. And for some unexplained reason, we don't know yet, he is a very important person all of a sudden, and is now integral to the plot and also the aliens' plan. So the story moves at a really good pace. Has sufficient intrigue with this. This is what Arturo is saying, and turns out he says the story is pretty predictable. So there are a lot of cliches in it, and it's something that doesn't really want to continue reading as far as that goes because it's just something that is bogged down by cliches. And also, with the first few chapters, there isn't actually a whole lot of space piracy, which is definitely what Arturo was looking for. So he says that this is something that you're interested in as far as like an idea of going out into the cosmos and fighting alien bears, and that sounds really cool to you, feel free to check out the series, but he's not going to stick with it.
All right, so that was it for our books. Again, if you want to not miss any of these, subscribe, please. We really love that. And if you like this video, please hit the like button. We would appreciate that as well. And if you can leave comments, that would be fantastic. And if you want to stick around the channel for a little bit longer, I want to let you know that we have um, some other recent videos that you might like to watch that Google is suggesting or YouTube is suggesting. So thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.